Well, that was Conservative leader Andrew Scheer defending his climate change plan and his decision not to take part in any of the big climate change marches last week. And he's also made it clear that his party doesn't share the election priorities of many of the country's biggest environmental groups. That's become clear in a survey released today done by Environmental Defense for 14 major environmental groups in this country, asking the 6 federal parties for yes or no answers on key environmental issues. Tim Gray is the Executive Director of Environmental Defense. He joins me now. Mr. Gray, good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Hi. Hi.
Let's start with a little bit of background. What was the purpose of this survey?
Yeah, we really wanted to try and distill down the concerns of Canadians into 10 easy to understand questions that we could put to the parties. This started with a more lengthy conversation with each of them that started last winter, but then we wanted to distill it down to things that people could clearly understand and that they could give yes or no answers to, and then add some additional detail if they wanted to. So we started this process like several months ago, and then the questionnaire went out in early July. And we spent a lot of time following up with each of the parties to get their specific responses. And I think what's really encouraging here is that 5 out of the 6 parties did respond, and all of them did provide written responses, so Canadians can see very clearly what their commitment to these priorities are.
All right, we just saw some of them flash by on the screen there, but give me a sense of the kinds of questions that you asked the parties that would allow them to give a yes or no answer, because I suppose some of them could say, look, and you did allow for partial answers and so on, but give me a sense of what some of these key questions were.
Yeah, for example, on climate, of course, which is the top concern of Canadians right now, we asked them whether they would make a legislated commitment to keep emissions from Canada at a level that would ensure that we met our 1.5-degree target that we signed on to in Paris. On toxic chemicals, we asked them to move forward to modify the Canadian Environmental Protection Act to ban chemicals that are dangerous and to change the process by which we review them. And on plastics, which is a high concern to Canadians as well, we asked them if they would ban single-use plastics and move to circularize the economy so that we collect and recycle much more of the plastics that are produced.
Okay. Did any of the parties commit to tackling all of the priorities?
Yeah, I think the Green Party, I'm just trying to remember what they all responded to, but I think the Green Party actually responded affirmatively to all of them. What's interesting, of course, is that four of the 6 parties tended to respond quite strongly to most of the questions. Of course, we didn't get a response from the People's Party, and the Conservative Party decided to respond in a negative way to all of the questions and commitments that we were asking them to make.
Okay, and how do you interpret that?
Well, they obviously considered this carefully. We had a lot of back and forth with them, including in-person meetings back in the winter, trying to seek them to commit to things that we thought would be aligned with their particular approach to regulating and moving forward on climate change, things that were more market-based, et cetera, which we thought might be more on brand for them. They clearly have chosen to not commit to doing any of the things that we asked them of in the survey, and they wanted us to make sure that we recorded the response that they sent to us as their response to those 10 questions. So this wasn't a case of us just lifting something from their existing platform and mischaracterizing it in some way. They specifically asked us to consider this as their response to those 10 questions.
Okay, so they wanted to make it clear that, so you had this list of questions that called for commitments to a certain kind of action. So they wanted to make clear that everybody knows that, yeah, we're not doing what you want us to do. And they weren't shying away from that.
No, they were very clear, and we had good back and forth with them. And I think the public can now take the information that's provided in this summary and in the more detailed background of this provided as well. And that will help them make decisions about who they want to vote for in this election. And of course, this election is very, very important to make a decision to choose candidates that are going to best reflect a priority around the environment. And now you can see very clearly what the various parties' views are in a concise way, which is always hard to digest for people, right? It can be a complex subject. So we spent a bunch of time here trying to make sure that we could make it understandable and digestible.
Okay, so tell me about this back and forth you had with the Conservative Party. How did that go? When they said, look, our answer to all these questions is no. What did they say is the reason for that? Did they say, we don't agree with your premise, we don't agree with the targets? What was their reason for rejecting them?
No, the interaction with all the parties, as I mentioned, started last winter, where we had one-on-one meetings with a more detailed series of policy proposals, and those were all conversations that took place with the people writing platforms for each party. That was very cordial. We had good meetings. They listened to what we had to say. And then during the development of the actual survey, which started in July, it was very similar. We didn't ever receive a response from any of the parties, articulating anything other than what we received from them. So, the Conservatives didn't have any reason for why they chose to answer in that way. We made it very clear to them how we would be characterizing responses and the format, et cetera, and that was the response they gave. But there was no rationale provided beyond that.
Okay. So let me ask you, which party emerges with the highest level of commitment to your priorities? Can you tell us that?
No, I think that's one of the interesting things about being a charity involved in trying to inform the public is that we're not allowed to by law under the Income Tax Act to tell people which, in our estimation, is the best party to vote for. That's why we do a survey like this that actually characterizes and includes all of the responses from all the parties, and then the public can read that and they can make their own estimation about which of the parties best reflects their views, and so that's why we've done it this way.
Okay, so I think you've mostly answered it. So, how do you want? So, how do viewers use this information then, or voters use this information? It's fairly handy. They can see it on your website at Environmental Defence, and it characterizes. It puts them into boxes exactly how they've answered on these key questions. What more should they do beyond that?
I think people really need to, in this election, vote for the party that is going to do the most to advance environmental priorities. We know from the information that's coming from the international science community, international governance banks, et cetera, that we have a very short period of time to address the climate change and biodiversity crises. Many of these issues are interrelated and tied together, everything from plastics to toxins to agriculture to what we're doing with biodiversity and protected areas. We need to act on all of these, and we have a very short window to do that if we're going to ensure that our civilization continues. So Canadians have a particular responsibility to looking at these issues carefully, assessing the commitments parties are making, and voting accordingly.
All right, Tim Gray from Environmental Defence. Good to talk to you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot.